Hey everyone! Today I want to dive into a super interesting topic that you might not have heard much about unless you're in the medical field, or maybe you've had some experience with it yourself. I'm talking about non-ossifying fibromas, or NOFs for short. Now, before you start thinking this sounds like some complicated medical jargon that's only meant for doctors, stick with me because it's actually pretty fascinating and relevant, especially if you or someone you know has dealt with bone health issues. So what exactly is a non-ossifying fibroma? Picture this. You're a kid, maybe between the ages of 5 and 15, just living your life, playing sports, climbing trees, and then bam! You go for a routine x-ray and the doctor says, hey, you've got this little thing called a non-ossifying fibroma. You might be thinking, what on earth is that? Well, let me break it down for you. These lesions are benign, meaning they're not cancerous, so that's a relief right off the bat. They arise from something called dysfunctional ossification. Ossification is just a fancy term for the process of bone formation. In the case of NOFs, there's a hiccup in that process, which leads to these fibrogenic lesions developing. They usually pop up in the metaphysis of long bones, which is basically the area where the shaft of the bone meets the end. So, think about your arms and legs. These are the spots where NOFs are most commonly found. Now, the cool thing about non-ossifying fibromas is that most of the time, they don't cause any symptoms. That's right. You could be running around without a care in the world, and then one day you find out you have this little bubble of fibrous tissue hanging out in your bone. It's often discovered incidentally during routine x-rays for something else entirely. You might be at the doctor's office for a sprained ankle or just a checkup, and the next thing you know, they're showing you these images on a screen pointing out this bubbly lesion. What does that mean? Well, on the x-ray, these NOFs have a very characteristic appearance. They look like these eccentric, bubbly, lytic lesions surrounded by a sclerotic rim. If you're not a radiologist, you might not know what that means, but it's kind of like looking at a donut. You've got the soft, squishy part in the middle, the bubbly lesion, and then you've got the hard, crunchy part around the edge, the sclerotic rim. This appearance is a key indicator for doctors when they're diagnosing a NOF. Now, you might be wondering, should I be worried if I have one of these? The good news is that for most people, NOFs are completely harmless. In fact, most of these lesions resolve spontaneously over time. That means your body can often take care of it without any intervention. Isn't that amazing? You could essentially have a little fibroma in your bone, and it might just disappear on its own as you grow. So, what's the typical course of action if you find out you have a non-ossifying fibroma? Well, doctors usually recommend observation. That's right, just keep an eye on it. You might have follow-up x-rays to monitor the lesion, but most of the time, no aggressive treatment is necessary. This is a huge relief for many parents and kids who might be worried about surgeries or other invasive procedures. And for those of you who might be thinking, but what if it doesn't go away? It's important to know that while they're generally benign, if a NOF doesn't resolve or if it starts to cause issues, your doctor may consider other options. But honestly, that's pretty rare. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Why should I care about non-ossifying fibromas? Well, understanding these kinds of conditions can help you become more informed about bone health and what's happening in your body. It's a reminder that not everything that sounds scary is actually dangerous. Sometimes, our bodies have these quirky little things going on that are just a part of growing up. And let's be real, if you're a parent, this information can be super beneficial. Knowing about NOFs means you can be more aware of what to ask your doctor during checkups and what to look out for if your child has an x-ray. It's all about empowering yourself with knowledge, right? So, if you're ever in a situation where you hear that term thrown around, you can confidently say, oh, I know what that is. It's just a benign fibrogenic lesion that most kids outgrow. You'll be the coolest person in the room, trust me. In conclusion, non-ossifying fibromas are a fascinating example of how our bodies work, especially during those formative years. They remind us that sometimes things aren't as scary as they seem. So next time you hear about enough, remember, it's just a little bubble in your bone, and most likely it's nothing to worry about. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you learned something new today.